Welcome, everyone, to the Tuesday edition of the RotoWire NFL podcast, of course, brought to you by Underdog. I'm Joe Bartel. Alongside me every Tuesday moving forward is Jake Letarski. We're talking pre-week one waiver wire pickups. It's officially that time. Football starts Thursday. We have games Thursday, Friday, Sunday, and Monday. Week one heading our way. We're going to get you set with these free agent waiver wire pickups here in a second. Again, welcome everyone to the Tuesday edition of the RotoWire NFL podcast brought to you by Underdog. We are proud to partner with Underdog for the entire NFL season. Underdog Fantasy is the easiest place to play fantasy sports, and it's also the fastest growing fantasy app in the industry. In addition to their popular best ball contest, which I've done a million of at this point, Underdog also offers great DFS pick'em games. You can pick whether your favorite players will go higher or lower than their stat totals in games and have a chance to win big. You can even win up to 1,000 times your money in a single night by picking between 2 and 8 players to build a pick entry. Right now, they have the Travis Kelce special going. You can just take the half point over on his receiving yards. And you have the option, you could take the higher on the half point for Travis Kelce. They have a few specials going on throughout the week. So definitely tune in. Sign up to RWNFL to claim your first free pick plus your first time deposit offer up to $1,000 in bonus cash. Visit UnderdogFantasy.com or find them in the App Store. And don't forget to register with promo code RWNFL to claim that free pick and first-time deposit up to $1,000. Must be 18 plus years or older and present in state where Underdog Fantasy operates. Terms and conditions apply. Concerned with your play? Call 1-800-GAMBLER or visit www.ncpgambling.org. Arizona, 1-800-NEXT-STEP or text NEXT STEP to 53342. New York, call the 24/7 HOPE line at 1-8778-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY. All right, Jake. Pre-week one waiver wire pickups. No, you're smiling. I can do this.
That's quite the read, though. I mean, hell of a job with that. Whenever you have to rattle off all those phone numbers at once, I think, wow, very nice.
I want to get right to it because there's a number of waiver wire pickups we've identified. We had the label is 10, but collectively, you and I have put together our favorite 10. So I think it's more like 6 or 7, but we go through a whole list. But starting from the least important of our 10 to the most important. I'll let you go first because you had a different list than I did for this.
So just a quick refresher here. We do this waiver wire show every year. We like to keep it under 50% on either Yahoo or ESPN. So we're actually talking about attainable players, thinking a standard format, 12-team, half PPR. We'll get into some fab recommendations later, but based on a $100 league here. But anyway, we're supposed to start out with names right off the bat here. So you want me to just do my entire top 5, or do you want me to go 5-5?
4-4. Let's go back and forth a little bit of this because again, Jake, your list is a little bit different than mine.
Yeah, it's a lot different.
I took some bold, under 50%.
Yes, I took some very, very, very bold ones, and I feel like I have a lot of guys that are right on the 50% line, so I had to make up with it with some bold ones. But either way, number 5, Colby Parkinson, tight end for the Rams.
Yeah, and we've talked about Colby Parkinson before. We did our live auction draft on the NFFC last week. I don't know if we ended up getting Parkinson, but we mentioned it on air. I think that's going to be fantastic. Tyler Higbee out for the first 4 weeks of the season at minimum, likely a little bit longer. He's outside of my list because I think there's a few tight ends that have a just as unrealistic chance to be rostered even in 12-team leagues.
Fair.
But Colby Parkinson, I think right away, and we'll be talking about it, I think, for a couple of weeks. My first one off the bat, and it's more of a reminder, Jordan Mason is your backup for the 49ers. Elijah Mitchell on injured reserve will not return this season. Isaac Guerendo got injured with a groin injury, or picked up a groin injury, I should say, earlier on the past week or so. I don't know what it means. Christian McCaffrey, theoretically good to go. I would hope so for Monday Night Football. They brought back Brandon Ayuk, signed Trent Williams. The Niners should be set, but you should have Jordan Mason on your roster, and especially if you have Christian McCaffrey, I think you need to pick up Jordan Mason.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you can debate handcuffing all you want, but when it comes to the number one player in fantasy football, it's probably prudent to have his backup here at all times just to make sure you're getting something, even if it's half the production here. So I had Jordan Mason on my list, but then I took him off as a couple other guys came up, and one of the running backs that I put on instead, actually, this is who I took off Jordan Mason to put on, and that's Ray Davis for the Bills. That's just
my guy.
That's just kind of a reminder that he's pretty much beat out Ty Johnson for the backup job, or so it seems here. And whether you're a James Cook believer or not, James Cook might be a little bit undersized. He doesn't really come through in the red zone because they like to power Josh Allen. Ray Davis is going to fill that. He's basically what James Cook is not, and he could cut into his workload at one point or another.
Ray Davis only rostered in 18% of Yahoo leagues. That is actually my favorite waiver wire pickup this week.
Mm-hmm.
You were targeting guys that were just under 50% or somewhere
Yeah,
around
a
there. And I'm
couple that
looking
I
at
was. Yeah.
well, I was just going to say, I was going for guys that even in 12-team leagues, you might want to consider.
Mm-hmm.
If you had an A.J. Dillon or an Elijah Mitchell who are done for the year in injury reserve, you pick them up instead. If you have Ricky Pearsall, who will at least
Yep.
not play for the first 4 weeks of the season,
Mm-hmm.
I'm picking up Ray Davis every time. And remember, last
Exactly.
year, the carcass of Leonard Fournette played snaps for the Bills. They also had Damian Harris that they had. I think between those two, they had over 700 snaps between those guys. And I think Ray Davis immediately fills that role and frankly is going to be a better runner and therefore might take some of James Cook's opportunities. I think Ray Davis is clearly one of the top pickups this
Even
week.
a 35% work share in one of the allegedly best offenses in the league. Obviously they lost some pass catching weapons here. But you throw that out there, I think there's some utility there here. So yeah, like you said, alluded to, we can move on here. My next two names are names that I was surprised to see under 50%. One guy almost didn't go in a 12-team draft I did last night, and that was J.K. Dobbins, the running back for the Chargers. He's splitting time with Gus Edwards, but on the off chance he is actually healthy this year and lives up to some of that long-awaited potential, it's worth taking a flyer on him. I'm just going to go to my number two because they're very, very, very similar here. My number two is Rico Dowdle, who's right at 49% here. Those guys should be rostered in most formats, and if you took a real deep sleeper early on in your July drafts, or you ended up with someone who is injured or you'll be able to place on IR soon, I think those are two players that should be rostered.
So again, Colby Parkinson, Ray Davis ended up being my top pickup this week. J.K. Dobbins, Rico Dowdle, close to your list for me. Jordan Mason, and then a trio of pass catchers in the case of Michael Wilson. Only 17% rostered for the Cardinals. Noah Fant, who is the tight end that'll probably take over Colby Parkinson for the Rams. Noah Fant, obviously, for the Seahawks. We had talked about, I think, on the Tuesday show as well, where between Will Dissly and Colby Parkinson last year, they had over 1,000 snaps for the Seahawks. Neither of those guys got replaced with anything substantial. Noah Fant signed a long-year deal, or a couple-year deals, I should say. I think that's going to be interesting. And, of course, the college Washington coordinator is now the coordinator for the Seahawks. So Noah Fant is above Colby Parkinson in my rankings, but I think both those guys, if you're speculating on tight end, makes sense. And then the other pass catcher, Rashad Bateman, only at 14% rostered right now in Yahoo leagues. There has to be a third pass catcher for the Ravens. It can't just be Mark Andrews and Zay Flowers. I love what Derrick Henry can do, that rushing attack. Lamar Jackson's going to be just fine, I think. But Rashad Bateman finally in a full offseason that was healthy. We heard Lamar Jackson talking about yesterday. The offseason, we saw a contract extension given to Rashad Bateman. The Ravens front office isn't dumb. They're choosing to do that because they're speculating on the potential that Bateman can have. And more importantly, Dontez Walker, Nelson Aguilar, I think those are kind of just guys behind him. So I really believe Rashad Bateman, if you're saying I have one roster spot to spare, these receivers aren't really going to work. Like, who do I want to get a chance for? I think Rashad Bateman kind of fits that category. There is one other receiver that you have listed down among your top 10. Though.
This is one that I'm going to take a big swing here. Actually, he's one that I don't see thrown out there on a lot of other lists or shows or anybody else that does this type of thing. Somebody that is pretty likely to not be rostered in your league, and I'm not saying to go drop a solid guy that that you have draft stock in, but I'm taking a long hard look at Jermaine Burton from the Cincinnati Bengals here. He would be the perfect sneaky ad type of guy, right? He's only rostered in 4%. Guys, this Ja'Marr Chase situation is starting to get a little bit serious here. I know I downplayed that early on. I'm willing to eat those words. But he showed up in street clothes again on Monday, and guess what? They have a game this week. So at what point, even if he does decide to show up in practice, now obviously him and Ja'Marr Chase and Burrow have all the chemistry in the world, right? From going from their success together so far to their time in college, they shouldn't necessarily need a whole lot of practice reps to get the timing in. But there gets to be a point here where if it's today, if it's Wednesday, Thursday, and he hasn't practiced yet, how can a coach let him go out and play in a game? There might be an injury risk just as far as, getting loose and doing stuff. Maybe he's working out on his own. Who knows? There's a holding. So
yeah, that's totally fair. Totally fair. Keep going.
So
keep
anyway, so where that leads me here is looking at this Bengals depth chart. And there, of course, you have T. Higgins. I've been pretty heavy on T. Higgins late in drafts. The more worried I get about Chase, the more T. Higgins I tend to grab, which is fair because he has some pretty solid chemistry with Burrow too. And then you look after that, and we list Andre Iosivas at number 3 on the depth chart. He doesn't excite me so much. He could definitely get some added snaps, and the Bengals at least last year never really emphasized the tight end. It was more 3 wide receiver sets, right? Because you had Chase and Higgins and Boyd. So sans Chase, you've got Higgins, Iosivas, and a guy named Jermaine Burton out of Alabama here. He was my number one pickup. I think as far as taking a big swing and somebody that could actually help you or turn into something this season, that's what I'm shooting for here. And he was a 3rd-round pick out of Alabama, like Jamar Chase, big play type of guy, right? I think he led the SEC with over 20 yards per catch, or he led him in 20. It was over that or 20-yard plays or something like that. But anyway, big play guy. He has been really active in the preseason, which you could count as a negative here. But he scored twice in 3 preseason games. He's getting targets, even if it's with the backups. He shows that he's perfectly adjusted to the speed of this game. He's a guy that played 2 years at Georgia and 2 years at Alabama, so obviously he comes with the highest pedigree here. And there's plenty of Bama receivers, Georgia receivers that are doing just fine in the league here. Anyway, I'm going with Jermaine Burton. I'm going to add him in as many places as I possibly have room, just in case this Jamar Chase situation doesn't quite work itself out the way that many people are hoping for. If Jamar. Listen, I'm really, really going on a limb here, but if Jamar doesn't play this season, we could have a Puka Nacua situation on our hands, right? That's what everybody's trying to do. They're trying to get the next one. So I'm going to take a huge, huge swing here and take this guy from the Bengals, see if it works out.
I'm glad you quantified it that way, because if the idea is, well, once Jamar Chase returns, because he'll eventually return, then it's Jamar Chase, T. Higgins, and I feel like Iosivas is going to have a role similar to Justin Watson last year for the Chiefs, where he's not going to be relevant fantasy-wise, but just knowing enough where he hurts your guys that you maybe want a little bit later on the depth chart, and the passing attacks matter too for the Bengals and Chiefs. But Burton has the pedigree. He probably would have been a higher draft pick, but he's a bit of a head case. We'll see if the Bengals rein that in or whatever, but they have a murky situation to start. So I agree with the idea that Jamar Chase could possibly not play. At least of all these guys that we're worried about, Jamar Chase is not like the only one left. Yeah. Fine, makes complete sense.
The best wide receivers are head cases, Joe. It's a feature. It's not a bug.
I was gonna say, is that just a rule? I'll quantify this by saying I would rather have both Michael Wilson and Rashad Bateman as somebody who's drafting Jermaine Burton often in best balls to begin the summer months or whatever.
Yeah, those are obviously safer picks here. If you needed to get 8 points from your wide receiver 3 to save your life this week, then sure, yeah, those guys are going to be safer picks here. I'm just going to take a home run swing right off the bat, see what people think.
I love it. It'll be cheap. Again, this is pre-week 1. People really have more or less made their roster choices. You're not going to be trying to change that too much. So to recap real quick, our guys that we like: J.K. Colby Parkinson, Ray Davis. Ray Davis is my top pickup as well too. J.K. Dobbins, Rico Dowdle, just under the 50% threshold. If you are in a 14 league and for some reason those guys aren't picked up, go ahead and grab them. Jermaine Burton is Jake's home run swing. We'll see if it hits. My guys, Jordan Mason, backup for McCaffrey, who is practicing, should be ready for week 1. Just keep in mind if you have Christian McCaffrey, because Elijah Mitchell on injured reserve. Michael Wilson, Rashad Bateman, 2 players under 18% roster in Yahoo, I think could make a difference maker from a receiving perspective. And no offense, and again, I mentioned Ray Davis is my top pickup with Leonard Fournette and Damian Harris factoring in last year. I think Ray Davis is a much better option than both those guys. So those are our top waiver wire pickups. However, you and I, and we'll be doing this all season long, Jake, still go through every team. And there's some quick hitters at different positions.
Every position. Yep.
Yeah, sorry, every position, going through a lot of these different options out there. And, think specifically quarterback streaming, for example, that could be different than saying we want them to be a top 10 waiver wire pickup. And you can still find value in that. So anything else or any news that you want to talk about real quick before we move on?
Let's do news and just quick hitters here, because we want to start the show. It's a waiver wire show. We want to start with the pickups here, but just to run through a news from kind of the last 24 hours. I don't know how much was hit on yesterday's show, but let's see. In quick hit form, no Mark Andrews on the injury report heading into the Thursday opener. He's going to be fine. Christian McCaffrey is back at practice, and Trent Williams has ended his holdout here, so that's looking very good for McCaffrey owners. Maybe a little stock down on Mason. I don't know if that's what made me take him off the list, but anyway, he would be a good guy to own. Tyreek Hill, Jalen Waddle have both been cleared. Tyler Lockett intends to be available for week 1, and Jordan Addison is someone I'm getting a little worried about. Remember when he got carted off the field, and then we just never heard anything about it?
Never heard from it yet.
Yeah. He has an ankle injury, and he's looking limited to practice. We haven't heard much from him, so that's a situation worth watching. He's definitely not going in my starting lineup week 1 when I can avoid it. So
Yeah, and
that's
we
all I got
also
for news.
know Hollywood Brown will not play Thursday, or at least he's listed as
Yeah,
doubtful. We
I
haven't.
thought that was kind of presumed. That's why I didn't
Yep,
include it.
yep. No, and
But yeah,
that's
just
it's
do
good.
housekeeping. Yeah, no Hollywood Brown week 1.
We'll have to see what happens with DeAndre Hopkins' status. He was the other guy that got injured during training camp. Would he be ready for week 1 or not? Well, we don't have information yet for the Titans pass catchers. But again, Hollywood Brown out. We'll see what happens for Jordan Addison, or at least we haven't quite listed him out. He's likely going to be out come Thursday's game. So let's get a word from our sponsors here from Fanduel. NFL Kickoff is here, and Fanduel is giving away a special new user offer to RotoWire fans. Sign up and bet $5 on any Fanduel market and receive 200 in bonus bets plus 3 weeks of NFL Sunday Ticket. That's a nice deal. Visit sportsbook.fanduel.com or download FanDuel Sports in the App Store today to claim this offer. And then let's get a word from our sponsors, Blue Wire. All right, we're back. And talking again about different positional waiver wires. We have mentioned our top 10 guys. We'll go through them as we're going through the different positions. But quarterback, for example, none of them made the list, but in one of my 12-team deeper leagues, Kirk Cousins is even available. So, there are guys that you could pick even pre-week 1 that you maybe would consider in your starting lineup.
Yeah, exactly. So now when we talk about these pickups position by position, it's important to consider drops here. Your drops in these situations are going to be guys that clearly got hurt, guys that you took deep flyers on that have moved down the depth chart, or if you auto drafted a second kicker, defense, or even a backup quarterback in these situations. These are your drops this week. So it's tough. We'll try to quantify droppable players as we go on during the season. So I just wanted to get that little note in here. But so with quarterbacks here, obviously no teams are on bye. There's no real need to stream a week 1 quarterback. I don't think any of the top 12 quarterbacks have a matchup that's so overly difficult that you think about benching them. You kind of roll with it.
Maybe Brock Purdy against the Jets, who is already a fringe top 12 guy anyway.
Yeah, I could see that. There's so many good names here on the wire, but I think quarterbacks deep. There are 20 startable guys any given week here, and I was surprised. In one of my leagues, I just did dollar quarterbacks and ended up with Tua and Herbert for $1 each in a salary cap draft. But now that I'm looking, that's what we're looking at here, because guys like Aaron Rodgers are on the waiver. Guys like Deshaun Watson are on the waiver. Deshaun Watson's 34% rostered. He's home against Dallas this week. Obviously, he has the stigma about him. There's a ceiling there. I personally don't. I'm not super high on him, but it's worth mentioning here. The question is, like you said, would you start Deshaun Watson over Brock Purdy? It's actually pretty close this week.
Yeah, I think I'd still start Purdy, but you're right there with the Trent Williams stuff. Like, does he play week 1 after just signing an extension today? Is McCaffrey going to be fully good? Is Brandon Ayuk? There's just enough question marks where, like, example, Kirk Cousins, I might pick up this week to start over Brock Purdy, even though I like Brock Purdy. It really is, what's your flexibility roster wise to make that happen?
Yeah, and then in a similar boat here, Baker Mayfield, 33% versus Washington. I obviously like Mike Evans and Chris Godwin this year. I think the Tampa Bay Buccaneers were one of my better over-win bets. So by proxy, I have to like Baker Mayfield a little bit. So I think he could be a guy that, maybe sneaks his way into the top 15 eventually this year. He's another name. And then Geno Smith, 32% versus Denver. I just kind of threw him on the list because he's playing the Broncos, who, will be, I think they'll be around, in the conversation for a top overall pick this year. So, but other than that, that's just kind of what's out there as far as possibly startable quarterbacks in, 12 to 14 team leagues where somehow you punted it or you don't have faith in Brock Purdy this week. We also do a 2 quarterback league update. Yep. As part of this segment of the show every week, so for our new listeners. And this week, it's just going to be I'm going to do this in quick hitter form because we want to keep kind of moving to the meat and potatoes here. It'll be just an update of who's won jobs in case this is your first podcast. You're doing a draft tonight. I still have one more draft tonight. Just a quick offseason update. Russell Wilson, this is always kind of expected, but he won the QB battle over Justin Fields in Pittsburgh. He'll start week 1 at Atlanta. Fields made that a little closer than many people will think, but it's Russell's job. A somewhat meaningful one, Jacoby Brissett is 2% rostered. He'll start week 1 at Cincinnati over Drake May. I actually have him rostered in our 14-team dynasty league because there's such a premium on quarterbacks when you have 20-man rosters. So, he's around just in case. Just in case you missed it, J.J. McCarthy's out for the year with a knee injury. He's on IR. Sam Darnold is only 9% rostered. He is going to start week 1 at the Giants, and presumably every game after that for as long as he remains upright there. And out west to Las Vegas, at the Chargers
No
week
Aiden
one.
O'Connell.
Yes, no Aiden O'Connell. It is Gardner Minshew. Well, just one of the great characters in the NFL. It's good to see him starting. Just for entertainment purposes, right? He's going to start for the Raiders. He's going to be the guy passing Devontae Adams the ball. In case you're curious, that is significant. So he's going to be starting for the Raiders week one. We'll see how long he hangs on to that. But Antonio Pierce has put his faith in Gardner Minshew.
We know that Gardner Minshew is your spirit animal here at the RotoWire office. So anytime we can get a Gardner Minshew mention is always good for Jake as well. But even like in the Scott Fishbowl, which is super flex, every one of those guys was rostered by round 14 or 15. So if you are in one of those deep 2 QB
even Jacoby
leagues,
Brissett.
Oh yeah, I took Sam Darnold with one of my last picks as well, and that was when it seemed like McCarthy might play. I would assume most of these guys. This will change, especially the streaming category, because you mentioned 20 different quarterbacks that you could realistically start each and every week. Mm-hmm. By default, I think both that stuff will be a revolving door, but at least pre-week one, not a whole lot of news.
And knock on wood, we don't have the crazy injury year like we did for quarterbacks last year.
Can't be much worse.
There were so many bad games because there was bad quarterbacks because there were injuries. No matter how much they try to protect these quarterbacks, there will be injuries, and we'll be guiding you through how to navigate those situations along the way. If one of these top 5 guys gets injured, then all of a sudden Deshaun Watson, Baker Mayfield look pretty attractive here as a fill-in option. So, we'll discuss that more and more as the season goes on.
Just to recap again from our top 10 waiver wire pickups, Rico Dowdle and J.K. Dobbins made your list, Jake. This is more of a reminder that if you're even in an 8-team league, at least in the case of J.K. Dobbins, I believe he could be a starter week one for that team.
Yeah, if you're in an 18 league, then there's probably even better options than those guys available. So, that's tough. But I just wanted to our threshold's 50%. We're going to stick to it. These guys are just under 50%. So, they're worth at least type in their name once in case someone forgot about them on draft day.
We've talked about Jordan Mason and Ray Davis, both guys that made my list for top 5 waiver wire pickups. Again, Christian McCaffrey's back and practicing. Ray Davis likely splitting time with James Cook to start the season. We know the Bills like to have that second back. There is that Jaleel McLaughlin part of things. And now that Samaje Perine, and we'll talk about him in a second, is over in Kansas City, McLaughlin is kind of the pure pass-catching back, at least splitting time with Javonte Williams for Bo Nix in that offense.
Yeah, I'm not so sure about splitting time here, but Jaleel McLaughlin looked all right in a limited sample. You mentioned the pass catching. He is the RB2. The team cut Samaje Perine last week. You look at the advanced stats we have on our profile pages. I always like to give that a glance over. He's got plus stats in broken tackle rate, positive run rate, and yards after catch. The one catch with Jaleel McLaughlin is rookie 5th rounder Audric Estime is around.
Estime, yeah.
Estime, okay. Yeah, it's just like estimate. I'll remember that from here on out. But that's how far he was off my radar because I can't even pronounce his name here. I think
don't blame you. It's fine.
McLaughlin is the RB2 in this situation here. So interesting. Again, if you got roster space to fill, go ahead and throw him in there.
In one of my leagues where you were not forced to take a kicker in defense, I had picked up Estime, and who will at least be among, I would assume, the sneaky waiver wire pickups later this week that Alan does on our wonderful YouTube channel. If you're listening right now, please hit the subscribe button. Give Jake and I many compliments because it makes us look good to our bosses, which we care about. But we want to give you guys the top, at least the top content that we can as well too when it comes to these waiver wires. It was between Audric Estime and Bucky Irving, a day 3 pick for the Buccaneers as well too. And right now, we at RotoWire have Sean Tucker listed as the number 2 behind Rachaad White. But I'm really, really curious if I could buy one more week with roster flexibility to have Bucky Irving on my team. There are reports of camp and thus far begin his rookie season. Bucky Irving's a really good pass catcher, if nothing else. We know Rachaad White had a ton of workload. So super deep, sneaky name as well too to keep your eye on for the Buccaneers. And again, Estime for the Broncos is a rookie along that same vein. Sticking in the rookie portion of things, no A.J. Dillon, unfortunately for us as Packer fans, but Marshawn Lloyd both missed injured reserve, which was kind of presumed at certain points of the preseason, and actually has been practicing as well entered the Friday game.
Yeah, he's an interesting one. He's the upside play. The more boring, gets you maybe 4 or 5 fantasy points is Emmanuel Wilson. Of course, is the RB2 because he's been in that room for quite a bit longer and doesn't have the the fumbling issues that Lloyd may or may not have. We'll see if he can iron those out in the pros. But if you're looking for another big swing, Marshawn Lloyd is only 14%. He actually didn't practice today, I saw, but they're saying he didn't have a setback or anything, probably just kind of a rest day. Pretty soon here, well, I guess the Packers play on Friday, so we'll see an injury report here soon.
I don't know if I'm not planning to use Marshawn Lloyd for the first month of the season, but he might be one of those guys, and you know I've done the show for a number of years now, where you don't want to let go of them. If you can hold on to one more roster spot, there's potential that he can be like again, I've been saying this for a while, a Justin Jackson to that Austin Eckler Chargers offense where 7 carries for 80 yards, and then the 1 week Jacobs is out, and Marshawn Lloyd has some value to that. So real quick, can I give you 2 other deep sleepers, Jake? So I
got a couple too. So
well, I think it'll tie in. Just so everyone remembers or knows, Dalvin Cook is signed to the practice squad for the Cowboys. They have Ezekiel Elliott. They have Rico Dowdle. If you are in a 20-team league, like I might be doing, Dalvin Cook might have been available in waivers. Consider him. He'll likely be called up. The NFL allows you to get called up twice, I think. And then you get signed to the active roster week 3. So places like ESPN or Yahoo, they might not sometimes show that Dalvin Cook is rostered. He's on a team, but expect Dalvin Cook to be called up for Dallas entering week 1 against the Browns. The other one to mention too. Oh, go ahead real quick.
I was just going to say that I've mentioned this on last week's show, but to me, that seems more like a Jerry Jones. Like I want to sign a name game to show this rabid fan base that I'm trying. Not necessarily
that's fine.
That's going to make that big of an impact.
I have no idea.
But there's a path there because know we're dealing with a pretty washed Ezekiel Elliott, and what's after that?
If I'm betting on this backfield, and I know this is going to hurt Uncle Ted's heart, who's all over Rico Dowdle, but I think Ezekiel Elliott does the most fantasy-wise. But that means nothing. I mean, they all could be like guys we don't want to roster.
And it's going to be he'll have the highest percentage of his production from touchdowns out of anybody.
Well, and I think he's the best pass catcher of the group. That's kind of the selling point for me, or at least pass blocker at certain points. So Dalvin Cook, practice squad call-up likely for the Cowboys. And then this got kind of missed, I feel like, this weekend, but Clyde Edwards-Helaire on injured reserve will miss at least the first 4 weeks of the season. So Samaje Perine, who was a Bronco, now signs with the Chiefs, immediately jumps ahead of Carson Steele as the backup for Isaiah Pacheco.
Yeah, I know. I just noticed that on SportsCenter at 2 a.m. last night. I'm like, whoa, wait a minute, what? Okay, but I mean, not that I was heavy on CEH anyway, but yeah, Samaje Perine now with the Chiefs. He's RB2. He could what was that other pesky Chiefs running back that would steal the pass catching touchdowns?
Spencer Ware and Jerick McKinnon over the years.
Yeah, it was McKinnon. McKinnon is the guy I was thinking of. Maybe that's probably a ceiling there here. I also did we mention Deontay Foreman? He signed with the Browns last week. Jerome Ford's the starter. Nick Chubb's on PUP. There could be something there too if you're again for the deepest of deep leagues.
Yeah, and Jerome Ford, of course, the projected starter right now in Cleveland's backfield. All right, we'll get to the receivers again. We've talked about a few of them, but real quick word from our sponsors, Verse Fantasy. Why wait all season to win in fantasy? With Verse Fantasy, you can cash in every week. Download the Verse app, sync your fantasy league, and start wagering and winning today. Verse Fantasy is the new way to play fantasy. There's no need to draft a new team or bring your league to a new platform. Simply sync your current team from ESPN, Sleeper, or Yahoo into Verse Fantasy app and instantly get money lines and spreads for your league's matchups that week. Play fantasy for fun is cool, of course, but playing for real money is the future. Play for real money on your own underdog lines and place contest entries between primetime games to bet on your own comeback. Verse will even show your odds for winning the title or being crowned the Sacco, everyone's worst nightmare, last place team. Enter the arena this season with Verse Fantasy and use promo code ROTO. That's ROTO to get a 100% deposit match up to $50 when you sign up to Verse. The wide receivers who have made our top 10 list, Jermaine Burton was your home run swing, at least, Jake. I had talked about Rashad Bateman and Michael Wilson. Is there other receivers we should look at as well, though, too?
Yeah, in the same vein as like the Dowdle and Dobbins play, I felt like I had to put Mike Williams on here because he's 44% rostered. He's also ready seemingly a little bit earlier than many people would have thought. I thought he would have been a PUP candidate, even just a couple of weeks ago, but he's been fully cleared for week 1 apparently, after the significant knee injury last year. And, he might get eased back into action, but if Rodgers in this offense turns out to actually be good, Mike Williams could be a decent complement to Garrett Wilson. And, he's someone that is probably being slept on. He was, one of the last players taken in the 12-teamer that I did last night with the kickers and the defense here. So, but if that same draft happens, 2-3 weeks earlier, maybe he's not taken because people assume he's going to be on PUP. So just wanted to throw his name out there.
Yeah, I like that one too. And real quick, strategy-wise, if you have one of these players that's going to be out 4 weeks, let's say Nick Chubb, for example, you can draft a Nick Chubb, assume he won't play, and if you have leagues that have the injured reserve spot, know that you're essentially getting a free space. So if it allows you to not have to pick up a kicker or defense, you can draft Nick Chubb, draft another offensive player, stash that guy, Nick Chubb, for example, and then get a kicker or defense. Not that we're doing draft strategy talk 2 days before the start of the NFL season, but again, this is something to keep in mind when we're giving these waiver wire.
I tried unsuccessfully to do that with TJ Hawkinson twice this weekend. Somebody sniped me for $1 more than I had for $5 instead of $4, and then somebody took him in like last night. The person who had Sam Laporta took him in like the 11th round, and I thought I would be so safe getting Hawkinson because I started with Pitts, who I don't trust and makes me queasy, my only pitch share this year. Anyway, moving on, more wide receivers. I got a couple more. Are you ready for them?
Yes, go for it.
All right, Jalen Polk is getting a decent amount of hype. Obviously, there's a situation here with Patriots wide receivers or Patriots fantasy players in general. Probably just want to avoid them unless you get like the best price ever on Ramondre Stevenson. But Jalen Polk's 23% rostered. He pretty much moves up the depth chart after Kendrick Bourne goes on the PUP list, and Juju Smith-Schuster has been released. He's with Kansas City now. Somebody has to catch passes here. Pop Douglas, DeMario Pop Douglas. I got to remember saying the names. We've been told that before. Pop Douglas he was effective last year, but of course, whole new quarterback. We'll see what happens. I got a few decent starts out of Pop Douglas in some desperation leagues last year, but Polk, probably comes with a higher skill prospect profile and has been getting a little hype there. So he's interesting. One guy that I'm actually growing on, the more I talk about him, is Adonai Mitchell. Did I say that right?
Mitchell, yep.
Adonai Mitchell.
Could go either way.
30% Yahoo here. Josh Downs has a high ankle sprain and is looking iffy for week 1. Mitchell is a rookie second rounder. He's up next on the depth chart after Michael Pittman. You have to have some faith in Anthony Richardson and the offense to actually throw enough to make a wide receiver 2 relevant here. But Adonai Mitchell is the wide receiver 2. And also the thing that
can I interject
in our player notes? Yeah, go ahead.
And you might be getting this too, but I want to make sure real clear. So clear rookie receiver, obviously you have Alex Pierce, who's a former second round pick, AD Mitchell, current second round pick, but Mitchell is projected to be in the slot in this equation. If Josh Downs does not play, AD Mitchell's a slot receiver, is a really tantalizing target in that Shane Steichen offense.
The last point I wanted to make is, which I just got from reading through our player notes here in preparation, is that in the preseason, Mitchell lined up both in the slot and on the outside. So the versatility will pave his way to potentially more snaps here, especially if they don't want to mess around with that high ankle sprain.
Unlike Jermaine Burton, who was an actual head case in college, I think AD Mitchell fell in draft value because there's some perceived stuff with that. There's something with his insulin or diabetes that there was a report after the draft. I think that's baloney, and I think AD Mitchell is going to be one of those really, really good receivers in the NFL.
I think it's 2024, and NFL team doctors have a way to fix that.
It's a joke in my mind, but whatever you could do to have somebody fall like that, I think it's a benefit for Anthony Richardson and the Colts. Again, I love Shane Steichen. I think he's a super underrated coach in the NFL, among the top offensive minds in the game. So give me as much as that one. That's a great call. And you talk about Jalen Polk. I've been asked in the office, once week 1 concludes Monday, of course, we'll do the show next week, Tuesday. We'll talk about the Niners and Jets game, but what's going to be the overreaction statement post week 1? And I said, I'm not sure there's going to be one other than everyone might just say, I don't want to have any Patriots at all on my team. So it's funny you mentioned Jalen Polk. I've actually been drafting Jalen Polk in some best ball. I don't mind DeMario Douglas as well too, but I would be sooner assuming the Patriots offense will look so miserable week 1 that we want zero to do with any of them. And that includes Ramondre Stevenson, but mentioning.
You're hoping for 1 or 2 garbage time drives against really soft coverage here, right? Those when it's 31-3 and they want to score to look respectable or something like that. That's really what you're hoping to. Sure. I mean, garbage time. There's no such thing as garbage time in fantasy, and that's where I did get a lot of the Pop Douglas production. I remember watching one of those early overseas games, like it's way late in the game. I'm watching this stupid game anyway because Pop Douglas, another catch, let's go, keep it going.
Against the Colts, I think.
That's
I remember that one.
That's familiar. So that's what you're kind of looking for with these guys, and maybe just maybe you get a big play early in the game here with Polk having a chance to do that.
Real quick, I'll reinforce from my top 10 list, both Rashad Bateman and Michael Wilson made my group. You look at the second-year receiver spike. I know it's been talked about a lot for Rashee Rice or Jaden Reed and what their fantasy value looks like. But quietly, I think Kyler Murray can have 3+ pass catchers be fantasy relevant. We've seen it a couple of years ago, even if he is the rushing force that he's been in past seasons, which is no guarantee. I'm also sort of fading Trey McBride when I say I like to pick up Michael Wilson, but as a guy that you can get pretty free off of waivers, if Michael Wilson was an 800-yard receiver, I would not be shocked at all by the end of the season. And that's also in the event that Marvin Harrison is just really good, which I think he will be, but it's not quite a guarantee. It never is with these rookies. So
He
something
went
to
in
keep
the
in
first
mind.
round last night of a draft. I did. Marvin
Interesting. Yeah.
Harrison. Yep. So
I
did
think he
Laporta.
went.
So yeah,
Oh, well, okay.
it was
That's
that kind of league.
unlikely. I've seen Marvin Harrison go in the first sometimes, but Laporta is a little
Yeah,
bit different.
I drafted out of the 7th spot, and I started Brees Hall, and then got Jahmyr Gibbs coming back in a league that's running back heavy because it only starts 2 wide receivers.
I did see that. I also saw that you got
I was
another.
ecstatic. I literally cackled out loud at home. I was like, these guys don't know what they're getting into.
You got another Joe Burrow share, which is going to officially doom both the Bengals season. So Jeff Erickson could officially anger at you because there's no way with the exposure that you have to Joe Burrow that he stays healthy all year. You're screwed.
Comeback player of the year and MVP.
And again, sticking in the AFC North, Rashad Bateman, I have mentioned it. The Ravens front office gave him an extension despite all the injuries. He's actually had a healthy offseason for the first time in his career. We had Lamar Jackson talk about how he expects Rashad Bateman to have a good year or breakout year. I wouldn't be surprised at all if this year's Nico Collins is Rashad Bateman. Maybe not like 1,400-yard receiver who we drafted in the second round, but I think Rashad Bateman has that type of potential. And yes, I'm saying that because I've watched him kill my Badgers over and over when he was back in Minnesota.
Yeah. That's very interesting here. I just I don't think they're just going to forget about Nelson Aguilar, but we'll see.
Rounding out our waiver wire pickups, we had talked about Colby Parkinson. He made your top 5 list again.
Right
no Tyler Higbee. No Tyler Higbee to start the season. I wouldn't be surprised if Tyler Higbee is out till at least November. So let's just say 7 or 8 starts of the Rams tight end who they signed in the offseason. I think that's a really impactful fantasy value.
Exactly. The tight end has always had a big role in this offense one way or another. Higbee has had some big fantasy games in the past. There are plenty of years where he was ranked in the top 8, in this similar role here. So Colby Parkinson's interesting. And just to throw out there, we haven't talked about matchups much in this show, but they get the Lions week 1, and the Lions weren't so great against tight ends last year, if I remember correctly. I think they were in the bottom 10 for most, if not all, of the year.
I think the highest over-under of the week 1 slate, I'm putting together my gambling article right now for the site. I think the highest over-under between the Rams and Lions, and the spread's pretty close. The Lions have, I believe it's 14 of their 17 games for Jared Goff in a dome. Not that it matters for Colby Parkinson, but something to consider as well for those tight ends.
15 catches for Cooper Kupp in week 1. Let's go.
Oh, well, that's possible. I had Noah Fant on my top 5 list. Again, no Will Dissly, no Colby Parkinson last year who was splitting snaps for Noah Fant. Yes, he has a toe injury. The new offensive corner might not involve Noah Fant quite to the extent that we had for Shane Waldron last year, but for 34% rostered, Noah Fant is going to be one of those guys we discuss often, I think, week to week. He's going to have like 4 catches for 50 yards.
You'd start, just to make sure, you'd start Noah Fant over Hunter Henry, right?
Oh, yeah. Yep.
That's actually a dilemma I have in a tight endless dynasty league. So
we presented this issue with the Tuesday auction draft that we did, Noah Fant or Pat Freiermuth. I think Freiermuth is the only time where I'm taking over any of these other over Noah Fant. That's
exactly.
But like Dallas Goedert against the Packers, where would you go with that? Noah Fant or Dallas Goedert?
Ooh, it's hard to tell what we're going to get out of this Packers defense. I might go Dallas Goedert, though he's a little banged up. I think he's going to be okay though.
I think it's something worth mentioning. You have one more name at tight end, and I have one more name as well too. So go ahead and write all of yours.
All right, yeah. I threw Cade Otton from Tampa Bay in here, 21%. He definitely showed flashes last year in his rookie season here. Again, I think this Tampa Bay offense is going to be a pretty well-oiled machine this year. And, not week 1, but week 2 gets those lines. So he could be, if he has a good game this week, he'll definitely be a popular streamer next week. So if you need a tight end too, because you just don't have a lot of faith in your first one, I certainly might be picking up Cade Otton in my Kyle Pitts leagues just in case it's more of the same. You know what I mean? You get yourself an insurance policy. So that's one name that I'm looking at.
I'm thinking super deep leagues specifically, Jake. You are in a few of them. I've already rostered this player in every one of those deep leagues that you're in. I don't want to actually.
Is Fishbowl still doing 2 tight ends?
There's advantages to having the additional point per reception.
I missed the boat on that this year, so you're a Fishbowl guru.
I was gonna say I don't want to pound the table because our mics pick up way too much, but I'm metaphorically pounding the table. If there is going to be this year's Trey McBride, again, somebody that comes on post week 6 and becomes a mainstay in your fantasy lineup, it's not TJ Hawkinson or any of these guys are getting in round 10 or whatever. It's Ben Sinnott, rookie second round pick for the Commanders. Now, don't do what my friend did and took Ben Sinnott over Blake Corum in a dynasty rookie draft. That's stupid. Don't do that.
Don't do that.
I do think Ben Sinnott is going to have fantasy value at some point. Right now, the carcass of Zach Ertz and John Bates are starting over them. And when the Commanders are 1-5, I think Ben Sinnott is going to be the obvious starter because they actually need to have offense and look good. So we'll probably mention him often if you are in a super deep league and have the opportunity to do it now, Ben Sinnott is a guy that I really think will explode onto the season towards the middle portions of the year. So those are our tight end options. And I guess, we don't normally do defense at kicker. How about you?
Let me just give my general thoughts on defense and kicker strategy here for the weeks that we're definitely not going to have time to do it. We did do streaming defenses a couple times last year. That's kind of a time permitting thing. As far as kickers go, right now you're starting the kicker you drafted here. The weather's still nice. There's nothing to worry about. As things move along, you pretty much grab the kicker, stream the kicker in the highest over-under game that is indoors in a dome stadium as the season goes. It's real simple. You can look up the odds online, and that is the way you want to do. You want to attack kickers for the rest of the year. And as you stream through, maybe you get a guy that gets you a dozen points, and you think, oh wait, he got a dozen points the last couple weeks. I might just stick with him. But that's how kickers work here, so we don't spend a ton of time on them.
Real quick, Jake Bates, kicker for the Lions. Somebody in the chat mentioned they're indoors till week 9. Really good offense. That's been my go-to pocket pick every single time. Came from the USFL, just like Brandon Aubrey, who was the Cowboys kicker that went insane last year. So Jake Bates.
Yeah, and we could talk about the other kicker battles, but chances are they're ranked too low that they won't be fantasy starter. Maybe somebody emerges as things go here. Defense-wise, I want to mention a couple names. Jerry Donabedian writes a fantastic streaming defenses article that goes into detail on this, so definitely check that out. See that link below if you're watching, rotowire.com/pod. If you're listening, rotowire.com/pod to check out a free trial to the site. But Jerry's got a good streaming defense article. He ranks Cincinnati number 1. Obviously, they're playing the Patriots. What the problem is they just miss our thresholds: 53% Yahoo, 62% ESPN. Clearly, every week, whoever's playing the Patriots is probably the first name you're going to type in if you need a defense stream. But then, streaming defense is actually relevant for me because in my leagues that still hang on to defenses, I usually wait till the very end to take them. And at that point, I'm not taking a defense that I'm really starting ahead for multiple leagues here. I was just looking at week 1 matchups and queuing up my defenses here at the end of the draft here. So some of the ones that are interesting, I'm targeting defenses that are at home against opposing bad rookie inexperienced quarterbacks here. So one that was on my mind, Seattle. They're home against Denver and Bo Nix. And then you put the note in there.
They have the Patriots week 2. They're my favorite streaming defense.
Exactly. Yeah, that's actually a really good. I didn't even look at week 2 when I took Seattle in last night's draft, and there you go. I'll be keeping them another week. If they are unavailable, I threw the Saints down here. They're also at home against the Panthers and Bryce Young. Could Bryce Young get better? Sure, but if we base any of this on what we saw last year, I would definitely be looking to target him for streaming defenses. And then, of course, Tampa Bay. This one's, obviously they're ranked down on this list for a reason, but they're home against Washington, against a rookie in Jaden Daniels. Do I think Jaden Daniels will be good? Yeah, sure. Do I think Caleb Williams will be good? Sure. But week 1 coming out and lighting it up for 3-4 touchdowns is a pretty tough ask here. I would expect a couple turnovers and some growing pains from each. And in that case, Tampa Bay kind of ranks on that list. So we'll do quick hitter streaming defenses when we can, or if there's streaming defense questions towards the end, hit them in chat and we'll save them towards the end. But that's kind of that's the show, right? We'll go.
Oh, we got mailbag here. We got
mailbag.
Questions.
Right, yeah.
We got some time here. So Jeff asks Zamir White or Raheem Mostert. Zamir White against the Chargers in Los Angeles in week 1, or Mostert against the Jaguars. ADP says Zamir White, and pretty clearly.
Yeah. I'm gonna go with Zamir White because I think he gets a higher percentage of the work share. Right, with Mostert, you're starting an RB2.
I think if it was the Chargers and Brandon Staley's defense last year, you always go running back against them, and we'll see if Jim Harbaugh can change that over a 6-month span. I'm not certain they can, so I'm going to take Zamir White in that equation. Craig asks, in a full PPR league, you can only roster 5 running backs. He has HN, Kenneth Walker, Mostert, Tony Pollard, Ty Chandler. Would you drop Ty Chandler to pick up Jalen Wright, again, rookie running back for the Dolphins?
Jalen Wright's not someone we mentioned on our show, right? Because that's the RB3 over there.
Yep, with Mostert and Devon Achane, yep.
I wouldn't make that move in particular. Now, Ty Chandler, I could see dropping to pick up some of the other guys that we discussed, but I wouldn't necessarily. Jalen Wright is someone that you roster because you can maybe get him as a $0 keeper or have him as a dynasty, but I don't expect him, barring injury, I don't expect him to contribute much for the first 6-8 weeks of the year.
I would rather have Ray Davis in this instance, but if this is a keeper sort of format, Jalen Wright is absolutely somebody I'm targeting. I think he is a better running back. This is the hot take here, 45 minutes in the show, a better running back than Devon Achane. Might not be the best offensive player, best fantasy player, but I think Jalen Wright is a better running back than Devon Achane.
Interesting.
And I would rather have Ray Davis as well, too, over Ty Chandler. Ty Chandler's not very good, but it really depends on what your roster build is. So
sure.
I think we have time for two more. Jonathan asks, hey, guys, I got Ayuk, Rashee Rice, and Devonta Smith, wondering who I need to bench out of those three. He's thinking Ayuk because obviously with the contract stuff and Trent Williams is coming back, but Rashee Rice, of course, playing on the opener Thursday. Devonta Smith going against our Packers in Brazil, where everyone's upset about playing there to begin with. And then Ayuk, a little bit tough question, I think.
Yeah, that is a tough question. And, normally the ADP is going to say Rice, of course, right? But, man, I can see why it's a question because I do want to say Ayuk. Part of it's the missed time. Part of it is going up against the Jets. So, shoot. I guess you kind of bench Ayuk. Am I crazy?
I think Devonta Smith will be fine. I would love my Packers defense to not look crappy. Jeff Hoffley, new defensive coordinator, appears to be putting more pressure on the turnovers and sacks, which is great. But that would allow for big plays, and I don't think they have the personnel to match a guy like Devonta Smith speed. So he's an automatic start, and I think it's them between Rice and Ayuk. Rice is going to play. There's no suspension concerns at least this year, so I think Rice is probably the right call. So. Final question here.
Great question.
Drafting in the number 6 spot. I know you've had a lot of different redraft leagues, so this is one of my favorite spots. Yep. If they are available, how would you target this, Jake?
I'm taking Amon-Ra every time.
Amon-Ra or Chase? You're going Amon-Ra.
I'm going Amon-Ra. Yep, at this spot. I was actually ready to take Amon-Ra at 7 here, but he was taken at 6 right before me, and I ended up with Breece Hall, which I was happy with. So, but Amon-Ra is number 1. You mentioned first 9 games indoors.
Yeah,
there's stability there. He's got the same role. He's the only. Jefferson changed quarterbacks, and Chase. Who knows if he'll even be out there week 1 here? I hate to ramp up the speculation here, but it is Tuesday, and I'm starting to get worried. There's a reason I made Jermaine Burton my number 1 home run swing pickup this week, and it's directly related to my Chase fears. I'm refreshing the Chase page right now. I'm not really seeing anything new, so.
I would go Jefferson out of that group only because I think he's the best receiver, and I think Sam Darnold is as good, if not better, than J.J. McCarthy year 1. I don't think there's much of a downgrade. So I think Jefferson gets a lot of the work. We had talked about off air. Jordan Addison, we don't know what his status is going to look like. He was the one guy, at least during the show that we mentioned, that got injured during training camp. We don't have any idea. Mm-hmm. I think Jefferson, at least against the Giants in week 1, is someone that's going to get funneled 16 targets, and we know what he can do in that sort of scenario if it's Darnold throwing it. So I'm taking Jefferson. Yep. But I don't blame you for going St. Brown.
Yeah, I'm going. Mine's kind of a safety pick. It's the least variables that you have to worry about here. So I actually did not get enough Amon-Ra this year, which is unfortunate. Probably going to go after him tonight in my final redraft super.
There you go. All right, that does it for us on the Tuesday edition of the RotoWire NFL podcast, brought to you by Underdog Sports. Of course, we'll be back again next week, post Monday Night Football, talking about your week 1 waiver additions. But thanks everyone for tuning in.